So, hello everyone. Welcome to our 17th episode of Leading the Change. Hans-Peter and I, we have been hosting this series for almost 2 years now. And a few months ago, we decided to do something special. The focus, or putting the focus of evolution on the evolution of sustainability in the fashion industry. And this was also the perfect time for Hans-Peter, or I asked Hans-Peter, why don't you sit on the other side of the panel and share also with some other panelists your decades of expertise. So I'm very glad, Hans-Peter, that you are sitting where you are today. Our topic today, we've chosen it to speak about from less harm to more good, which focuses on the shift towards sustainability in the fashion industry. And as a reminder, the EU wants to achieve a circular economy by 2050, which stems from the need to move beyond the outdated take, make, dispose model. And why so? Finite resources, including water, overflowing landfills, and growing climate challenges demand carbon neutral, toxic free, and circular systems. And interestingly, just yesterday, colleagues from another network were talking about or discussing about how Europe is building up the platform economy by developing smaller consumer-driven circular platforms. And this is particularly relevant also for the fashion industry, which can significantly benefit from these models. So when we decided, Hans-Peter and I, to choose our panelists, and we couldn't invite too many, so because of the time constraints, we wanted to invite panelists who could cover the entire value chain, or basically the entire value chain of this industry. So this is a perfect time for me to introduce you to our distinguished panelists, some familiar faces and some new ones. So I'm going to start with the new face, Tessa Borrenberghs. You are the founder of your own luxury brand, Borrenberghs. You combine luxury fashion with circularity, transparency, local production, and as such are contributing to reshape the industry through responsible design. Luis Cristino, with over 25 years of seasoned senior expertise, experience, and leadership in the textile industry, is committed to sustainability, circularity, and reducing the ecological footprint. And I know that you also worked in some work groups around with regard to the ISO norm, the 59000, which is dedicated to the circularity. Sarah Kovic comes from the corporate world, fashion, and is nowadays a serial founder of startups. With Okret, one of her startups, she drives fashion towards circularity through data-driven strategies and new business model, innovative business models. Then we go to Miguel Ramoa. You have 25 years plus in experience in textile development. You focus on innovation and lean manufacturing to promote and live sustainability. And last but not least, Hans-Peter Stadler, former senior executive at CNA Europe. You now focus also on transforming linear business model into sustainable and circular ones. And today I'm also pleased to have at my side to be joined by Frédéric Delange, strategy consultant at the Value Department, who will co-lead today's discussion. A few words to today's webinar format. As usual, we'll begin with questions for our panelists, and we reserve some 10 minutes at the end for Q&A sessions. If for whatever reason we run out of time, which happens from time to time, and or you miss the live discussion, please leave your question below in the comments of this webinar, and we will follow up. So now, Frédérique, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. To kick things off, we would like to start with a question that is addressed to everyone. And this is maybe a difficult ask, but we would like a simple yes or no. Of course, we'll be elaborating on the topics as we go on. But in your opinion, and maybe starting off with you, Tessa, in your opinion, has the fashion industry shifted from a mindset of simply doing less harm to actively doing more good? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. I think maybe we're on the go of a yes.
Okay, that's a good start. Luis, how about you?
I think in the parts of the globe already yes, doing less harm rather than other parts of the globe. I think Europe is doing fashion less in harm the planet than the other parts of the planet, of the world. Sorry.
Yeah. And Sarah, how about you?
It's normally my role to spoil the party. I think if you need a statistical answer, then it's a clear no. I think there is show that we want to do more harm, but if you look at the global fashion system, no, we are close to a yes, my opinion.
Yeah, clear. Miguel?
Considering that we have right now in the world enough textiles for the next 6 generations, I can see clearly a shift from a reactive approach from textile industry and brands for a more proactive approach. Okay, so I would say yes.
All right, thank you. And lastly, Hans-Peter.
I think I'd join Sarah's side. I think if I look at holistically on the industry, I would say no. While there are positive examples, but on the other side, if you look at the rise of fast fashion, ultra fast fashion, which really spoiled the industries and tremendous volumes, I would say, and scientific data, as Sarah says, prove that. I would say we still have a long way to go. So no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you all for this initial answer. And indeed, no consensus, but I do think that, as you say, we are on the way to doing more good. And of course, that is evident through all the hard work that you are all doing within your respective companies, within the industry. And of course, the fashion industry itself is facing increased scrutiny. Of course, that's also happening more recently, but that's been happening for a long time. Over its environmental footprint, everything from the very resource-intensive production processes to what you just mentioned, Hans-Peter, the rise of fast fashion. So what we do see, of course, is that sustainability is becoming more and more central to consumer values. And that, of course, places some pressure under fashion brands to having to rethink their practices. So the next question that I'd like to pose to, maybe we can start with Sarah on this question, is how do you think fashion brands can effectively reduce their environmental impact?
I think it all starts with knowing where you make impact, where you make positive or negative impact. So what I usually advise is just start with screening the whole value chain. It's absolutely necessary to understand where most of your impact as a brand or retailer, as a fashion company lies. And once you have a good picture of what you actually are causing with your operations and your product, then you can also kind of quantify how serious or how big it is. And I think throughout the supply chain, there is no one size fits all. I cannot say now the answer is there. We do see that, of course, in the product development and production phase, there is an enormous potential to do more good than less harm. So they could optimize the product, they could optimize the way they design, they could optimize the way they source materials. They could take circularity into account in the design and production phase. But also after the one-time sales that we do now, there is an enormous potential to prolong the life cycle of the product by educating and engaging the end consumer, providing initiatives for repair and all kinds of initiatives to actually make the products they put on the market last longer. And of course, at the end of life, to make sure they have efficient alternatives to the trash bin and to take their responsibilities for the products they put in the market to effectively bring them back in new loops for efficient material recovery. All of this is enormous, of course. I'm not saying any brand at this point, besides maybe the big guys, is able to do it. But that's why I say you can be very overwhelmed in the beginning. There is a lot of options. I would suggest that each brand stands closest to their own identity and values and act on where the biggest impact and quick wins lie at this point.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll be getting back to the topic of longevity and reuse as well. So that's a good pointer for afterwards. Miguel, what are your thoughts on how companies can do this?
So we know right now that only 1% of the textile that we produce annually it's recycled. But we also know that moving to a circular system would allow us to lower the CO2 emissions more than 60%. So we have to focus mainly on the beginning of the creation of textiles. In Adalberto, of course, I'm going to give us our example. We incorporated closed loop systems by focusing on recycling and upcycling these waste. Okay, to incorporate several eco-design principles that allow us very quickly to disassemble our materials, the goods that we produce, and then recycle them and upcycle them. We also develop some other techniques to dye without water, to give coating to textile to enhance their longevity and prolong their quality. So this is the main thing that we must focus on to create these eco-friendly processes where we move from fossil fuels to green energy and also to incorporate green chemistry into our processes. By focus on recycle and upcycling, developing processes with green chemistry and green energy, for sure we can make this transition from a linear economy that we have right now to a circular economy. We have the means. We are the first generation that have these means, and it compares to us to make this change.
So there's a lot possible.
Yes,
lastly, great. Lastly, Luis, I'd like to hear your perspective on this question.
I think Sarah and Miguel, I think it's already said everything that I thought, but brands must first understand that they're all the supply chain, every process, every emissions. This is not about small steps. It's about rethinking the how they design, the sourcing, how they produce. They must embed sustainability on the DNA of the product and the fashion brand. Reducing environmental impact starts with measuring what matters to reduce. Brands need to intelligence smart design practice, close the loop, like Miguel said, And one practical solution is to adopt recycled materials and regenerative natural fibers. They can reduce their environmental impact. The question is, are they willing to integrate these environmental costs into the product, under the price of the product? That is the main question that the brands have to think about, if they are willing to put the natural cost or the cost of the production into the price. So, I think the brands have to start measure all the supply chain to first understand the supply chain. After that, I think they have all the goals to reduce their environmental impact.
And I think on this last topic, we could have a whole new roundtable in itself. But quickly coming back to what a few of you have already mentioned now, being that one of the biggest challenges is finding ways to reduce waste, also maximizing the longevity of products. And again, as I said, as sustainability becomes a more central focus, many brands are attempting to rethink their approach. And of course, like you say, Luis, it really does have to become a part of their DNA. But you do see that more companies are really attempting to rethink the way that they design, produce, and also on the side of post-consumer use and reuse. So with that in mind, if we're talking about strategies specifically to effectively extend product life cycles, promote reuse, what strategies can be used in order to do that? And maybe I'll pop over back to Miguel to start off with this question.
So I was seeing the report that came out from Climate Week, and they were saying that the use of synthetic fibers, namely polyester, raised last year more than 10%. So I think it's clear to all of us. So we must to extend the product lifestyle. It starts with choosing durable and quality over these materials that have no quality. So we have enough textiles in the world, again, for the next 6 generations. The main thing is to focus on quality and durability by choosing the right materials. Okay? We must focus on quality, degrowth. It's the only way that we can have a clear strategy to counteract what is happening right now in the fashion industry. Unfortunately, like Sarah said, the numbers are not positive. They say this will grow even more, but we must alert all the players that this is not the way. We can do differently by, and we have numerous examples being happen right now, like the Real and other examples that show us clearly that we can repurpose, we can reutilize the textiles that can be made with quality. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of course, different textiles, different qualities of products used, Tessa, you are of course very intricately involved on the design side as well. Maybe you can shed some light on how you're working with that within Borrenberghs.
Yes, so from a designer point of view, I think everything starts with the design if we're talking about sustainable strategies. For example, you have to design your way that clothing or garment can be modular, or while designing, you also decide on which fabric you're going to use. So if you design with a high quality fabric, you're also going to think about the production techniques, and everything just is decided in the design. You can also think even further. For example, if you decide to use 100% polyester, most of those polyesters aren't even comfortable. So you know actually that the garment will be thrown out after 7 or 8 times wearing it. So everything really is decided in the design process, and designers actually have a bigger impact than they think on that part. When we think about circular strategies, yeah, we can think about so many things. You can decide to use different kind of buttons, for example, that can be easily removed when recycling the garment. Everything is dependable in the design process, and that's what I think is really nice, that I'm also a product designer, because I think about what happens before designing, during making it, and also afterwards when selling it. I think about how the customer is wearing my designs, like how can they easily adapt the garment to their body, because their body changed throughout life, so they wear it longer in a lifetime, and so on. I can talk for hours about this topic.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a very impactful way that the way that you design a garment and the materials that you use can really explicitly contribute to the longevity of the product. So
Yes.
yeah, amazing.
It all
and yeah, sorry, go ahead.
all about the designers that have to start taking responsibility too.
Yeah. So once again, another call to action. Sarah, maybe on the side of, we were just talking about, once a consumer starts wearing the product, maybe also talking about that part of the cycle a little bit more, and on the side of reuse. What are your thoughts on the topic of longevity and reuse?
Can I also just say something about the pre-consumer phase as well?
Of course.
I think it's very easy to give tips from sustainability experts, and for small designers, it's of course it's amazing to start from scratch and do it right away. But we are here because big companies need to make big changes, and that's much more difficult when you have built a linear system for years and you now need to switch. So I think we have a much deeper problem on both sides. Both designers, producers and consumers need to take their own responsibility, but it's definitely a shared responsibility. I think as long as we are pointing fingers to one side of the value chain, we are not going any closer to the solution. And I never met in my past experience a person of most commercial company or a most idealistic startup that didn't tell me the sustainability is part of their DNA and they believe in sustainability. So I think we as people, we do want to do more good, but we have built a system that is not good anymore, and everybody wants to get out of the system, but it's really not clear how you do that in 1, 2, 3. And there, I think our biggest problem at the moment is we don't understand the value of textiles and the work it takes in the back office to produce something and bring it to the consumer. And there we can take a responsibility as a company to say, wait, the consumer doesn't understand why they cannot buy something for 20 euros and still make it reasonable. How do we raise the awareness, educate the consumer, engage the consumer so that we can raise our prices as well, so that we can work in decent conditions and source quality materials and produce quality materials. Now, the biggest fear of commercial fashion brands is that we think consumer is not ready to pay for it. I mean, we have also enough research to show that it is like that. I don't think any material that we have produced in the past years can be seen as a big monster. Polyester is the place to go when you are producing activewear. So polyester is not going anywhere. We just need to find more efficient ways to streamline our processes and to make decisions based on the application of the material and not everywhere, everything. And for that, the consumer also needs to know what's good and why is it good. You cannot make activewear from cotton or linen, and that's just a fact. And I don't think tomorrow we as a society stop consuming and stop doing sports and stop wearing glitters to parties. We just need to create systems that make sure that the input and output of material can go in circles and not in lines. And I think there it's crucial that we just talk more, communicate more of what does it take to produce a clothing piece, but also teach the consumer, if you want to wear glitters and if you want to wear heavy prints, you are gonna be motivating the production and the printing of polyester, nylon. That's just how it works. If you want to switch and you can say, okay, we are all gonna walk in a bit more sober clothes from tomorrow, then yes, sure, we can talk about only natural and less harmful dyeing processes and washing and so on. But then there is a question, if the whole world switches to a couple of materials, we don't have enough. It will always have to be a combination of materials and combination of applications of materials, I think. And at this point, I think it's crucial that brands take responsibility for what they put in the market and prolonging the life cycle. So to go back to your question, I think prolonging the life cycle is offering repair services, but offering repair services for the sake of repair, not as a marketing trick, hoping the consumer takes 2 new pieces on the way to the repair station, you know. And offering take-back systems, meaning the responsibility is not in the hands of the consumer to think about the right material and the right disposal stream. The responsibility is in the hands of the one who produced it or the retailer who helped it bring to the market. So putting these systems together, setting up repair and take back so that you can re-inspect and sort the necessary products or materials to the right stream to recycle and be reused is definitely the responsibility of producers, brands, and retailers. But there is a huge responsibility lying on the consumer side of understanding what we are consuming, why we are consuming it, how often are we buying, what do we do at the end of life, and actually engaging in the circular initiatives that many brands are already offering, but are not interesting enough for the consumer. So I think we are in a much deeper rabbit hole and a much bigger change management where we really have to understand from a psychological point of view what is driving the consumer behavior, what is driving us to talk a lot about sustainability, accept that it's important and we all think we should be doing something to make a world a better place. But then once you have to decide with your own money, acting in a bit different way than what we are. So we all need to be walking the talk a bit more, I think. And for that, it's necessary that we share the knowledge, that we create actionable knowledge, both on the side of production as on the side of the consumption, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. And I totally agree. It's a harsh reality because, of course, we are making a lot of good steps, but we're definitely not there yet. And I think all the things that you've been mentioning, that responsibility lies with all the different parts of the value chain. And indeed, the consumer behavior is so important. Walking the talk, and well, we could go on and on about this this topic, but keeping an eye on the time, I'd just like to ask Hans-Peter if you have any final thoughts on this question before I hand over to Katrien for the next question.
I think also in the interest of time, and I agree with what Tessa, Sarah, and of course Miguel said. And looking at it, I think I fully agree that if you look at upstream, it starts with design. I would say what Sarah rightly said, for startups, that's easier. Now let's think about established retailers that are built on linear systems. I like the educational part, but I think I would start, we need to educate the designers. I think Tessa said they have a responsibility, but we also need to help them build the knowledge. So I think educating designers, and if you go downstream, I think what Sarah rightly said, so let's really make consumers aware and educate them and what's the real value of the garment. And for sure there are, Sarah talked about take back, repair services, but there are even rental models, subscription models. I think there is a way to do, but it really demands yeah, it's not just a small mindset shift, so it's really a big mindset shift, and I think it's making consumers aware of what's in a product, what's the value of the product. I think that's a good starting point, and I think we should invest, we should focus more on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is, there's a lot in this on the plate. I heard in doing things differently. We talked about education of the consumer, knowing about the value and when to use a fabric or a cloth. Also on the business models, when to do the triage, when should it go, which clothes can go, be taken back, which one can be reworked, repaired. So there is a lot on our table. Something which we didn't touch upon yet, which is about biomimicry. How can biomimicry help or support regenerative textile solutions? And I was thinking about biomimicry, for instance, if we want to replace some animal leather through regenerative solution. We have mushrooms who can produce something similar to leather, or we do have ananas skin and etc. What is the role of biomimicry in with new types of textile solutions? I would like to start with you, Luis.
Well, first of all, nature has spent millions of years refining solutions that are sustainable by design. That is the first point. I think is with this thought, I think we can say that biomimicry offer answers to solutions, and that the nature itself already made and designed. Like you said, you can develop fibers from mushrooms or pineapple, and with that fibers that after their life cycle can decompose without toxins and into entry on the value chain, on the production. That solutions in which materials returns to biological cycle. I think we can integrate with the environment without any answer. This kind of approach, I think, is not only innovative but necessary for the future. And the solutions are in the nature. And I think the textile fashion and the textile industry, I think, have the big question to answer. If we can change the paradigm from seeing the nature from the research as a partner rather than a research, I think is the big question that fashion have to answer, because the nature is a partner for the whole value chain, from the production, from the decomposing, and everything. I think is the mindset that we have to change, being nature as a partner, not as a resource.
Thank you, Luis. So, taking your words, mindset, nature shows us the solutions. What is your perspective, Hans-Peter?
I like very much, Luis, how you finished off that you said this mindset of treating nature on eye level as humans. So really, accepting that nature is equal is really a starting point. I think I like it very much. Although I'm not really an expert in biomimicry, but I think that for lots of industries, but especially also for the textile industry, biomimicry and getting more understanding of what nature offers is a huge potential. And if I just think about textile fibers, there are already examples, but nature has examples. If you take the lotus leaf, that is repelling water, that is repelling dirt. So, you know, using this as an example and saying, okay, why don't we innovate and take that as an example and create self-cleaning textiles? So we already have some protection layers, but why don't we go even a step further? Nature has examples that they self-heal themselves. Why can we not look into the area? Can we not create self-healing textiles? So I think there is lots of opportunities out there, and I'm really looking forward going forward. So I'm quite optimistic that mushroom leather or ananas things that's a starting point, and it's a good starting point.
Wonderful. I mean, I don't have to summarize the questions because I can basically hand it over to you, Tessa. What can you share, or what does it spark inside of you as a product designer?
So I'm always very glad to see if they found alternatives for chemical products. So if they have found something very, very great, like mushroom leather, they've discovered that under a microscope it has the same kind of structure as regular leather. So that's a great step. But yet still, I feel as a designer very dissatisfied with the quality of those natural, more natural products in textile. So for my opinion, we're far from there, but I do agree that we need to collaborate with nature. But I think we have to go deeper. For so far, I only have seen, for example, when I was doing an internship in Copenhagen, Denmark, there was a company who used lotus flower in a textile, which felt really soft. It was great, but I feel like we need more like materials into one product. Maybe like nature is collaborating and regenerative on itself. And maybe we need more than only just one ingredient. We're always focusing on one ingredient, mushroom, lotus, but we need more of it together so they work better together, because we most of the time have to add always a little bit of polyester to make it a bit more stronger, because yeah, it's the hard truth. If you look at many lyocell fabrics or organic cotton, they don't stand the test of time. And from my point of view, for a luxurious brand, I need to create products that really can be worn until I'm 90 years old, for example. So for me, it's still very difficult, or a work in progress, let's say, but I am a true believer in it too. And I really believe that we can find the good things together with nature, but we need to dig deeper in the soul.
So it means basically a continuation of exploration on how to combine them all together. I love your standpoint about self-cleaning textiles, about combining different I'm going to call them ingredients together to see how they're going to mesh and sustain the age. So this leads me now to another question. Because we talked about that there is a long way until we really become circular, because there's so many things to change, and we are just at the very beginning of the change. How can the industry become fully circular and generate profit? Because we talked also about prices earlier, and it's also about a mindset shift that a t-shirt, a sustainable circular t-shirt was done with the proper material cannot cost 2 to 3 euros, right? So how can the industry become fully circular and generate profits? Luis, I always come to you with the hard questions.
Yes, it's a hard question, and my preferred one for me. The circular economy, textile, is seeing the new frontier of profitability, because circularity is not just about recycling. It's about creating value at every stage of the product lives or the value chain. Because circularity is not only an environment issue, it's a resilient business model that brands as now adopting in very ways. Brands, I think that brands can adopt the product as a service model, because that is a way being circular and closed loop for the many stages of production. For example, we can create streams instead of relying on selling of one product, and create a service, and the product that we rent, imagine, can go to from me for you, or after that for Frederick. I think we can, or we have to change the fashion business model for a service, and that will impact all the value chains, and I think the brains, the DNA too. Of course, the question is how we will leave this movement for transform the economic model of fashion. It will be profitable to brands at this moment. The brands are ready for this kind of circularity to reduce their impact. I think is a very long way to do that and think about that. By mistake, many people think circularity and the closed loops is only, like I said on the beginning, is only recycling old clothes, but it's not. The fashion industry lose about 20% of the raw materials and all of the process. That is the point, and the increase to the circular economy and the closed loop inside of the industry. Of course, on the selling, they are running new business models, and the circular economy is a business model. I think companies and brands have to rethink about their business model. And after thinking, and if they don't change anything, I think they didn't understand the business of the fashion, or the new business of the fashion. And for me, the new business of fashion is circularity, not only productions, but only the side of the consumers. That is the big question. If we are, like consumers and producers, ready to change and think about that.
Yeah,
I hope you will be helpful.
And I think, I mean, the most critical thing in the circular economy is to keep the flow of the material, so that we can really regain it and gain it back and re-inject it in the whole process. Hans-Peter, from your perspective, would you see also, like, going, because we were talking business models, do the fashion industry need to change their business model within the fashion industry with all the different components, or can they also go into other industries where they can help other industries, where the textiles can be of use?
Before I answer that, let me maybe zoom out a little bit again, because I think looking back, everything that we talked, business models, so this is not only existing since yesterday. So, and the industry in itself has proven that it is quite slow to adopt. So I think external pressure from regulations and from stakeholders in itself is also an important component to make the industry really make the move into circularity. And I think, and your question said it, and of course it needs to be profitable, because I think the industry still needs to. I think from my perspective, what we discussed before, the industry can only really become fully circular if they can manage that consumers are educated, consumers are seeing the value of what is in garments and what is in sustainable garments. But more importantly, just having a sustainable garment that is not attractive to the consumer is not the answer. So the industry needs to find solutions that they can still produce attractive, because fashion is a very emotional product, so that they can still produce products that are wanted, that emotionally touch consumers and be sustainable. So I think that is really working on the consumer side, educating consumers. And then, of course, they can play collaboration, I think, is important, because no one really can do it in itself. So I think the industry needs even more collaboration on these topics, because we talk about, if we talk about reverse logistics, and I think Sarah can confirm that there is a lot of money sitting in there. So I think no one in itself can do it alone. And I think, and then they can play the piano on different business model. What is, and there is no one size fits all. I think that really depends on the player, on what fits best to their company. I think this is how I would look at it.
So excellent. And I think that circularity, and you all pointed it out in one way or the other, circularity is not just bringing back, it is also creating new revenue streams. And reverse logistics is definitely one topic to see how can we get it back, and so that we can keep the material flow. And I see already Sarah's eyes. So what are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
My thoughts. How many minutes do I have to summarize the thoughts? I think the problem is very obvious. If you sit very deep in the industry, then you see why we are not reaching the profitability. And I think that's actually the beginning of the problem. We are thinking in old systems and we want a new system. It's never going to work, I think. And for me, it starts with defining what's profit. I mean, there is no jobs on a dead planet, so that's clear. Let's take it from there. We don't count everything in euro cash flow, but we count also in other values, and we give space to other measures and other scales. And if we see that we are really on the verge of not having any more resources to work with, and we cannot just we don't have where to source anymore, then it's obvious we need to start thinking differently. And thinking differently for me is really stop counting the euros and taking the time to figure out what is the new way of thinking. And for that, I think, yes, the government has a huge role, not only in putting pressure, but also providing pre-financing. I think the responsibility can easily be put in who created the system, and there we need to look for some basic infrastructure, basic knowledge sharing, basic links to get the industry to another side. And there we cannot point fingers to companies or the consumer anymore. We need governments. We need the West that has outsourced the whole know-how and the industry in the East for decennia long, to tell us what's the plan now, how do we actually see this happening on a local level, on a more fragmented level, and so on, and how are we going to make sure that the crucial resources we are talking about within the European Green Deal are actually going to stay here. And for that, we just need enough money to fill the dip and to get out, because no take-back system, no resale, rental, lease system, call it whatever you want, is gonna tomorrow make sure that whichever brand that sets it up can grow out of cash flow. It's not possible. We are not creating the quality that we need to retrieve in the end of all this reverse engineering and logistics, so that we can actually be counting euros. And it's a simple investment plan. We need to cross the bridge to a system that is regenerative, that you can work upstream from design to end of life, but you can equally work from end of life to design. And that takes a lot of stakeholder management and a lot of infrastructure that simply doesn't exist today. So somebody needs to pay for it, and then brands can start calculating their own business cases and their own ROI and their own profitability. But if brands have to invest in all of these that we mentioned just today, it's never going to be an interesting business case for a CEO. That's just how it is. So I think, of course, a Hermes tomorrow can invest in a take-back system, and a resale market is very clear. But what makes the volume in the global fashion market is not Hermes, it's the average commercial streetwear brands that put a much lower quality and much lower price products on the market, and they need to figure out how what they retrieve with take-backs can be resellable and worth of material recovery. And that business case is not that difficult to count. It's just it keeps staying below zero, so you cannot convince streetwear companies to jump on it and actually start doing it. And I think there we just need to agree on, let's say, this point, European level, what is the system change that we see happening, and how is Europe going to support all the countries and the candidate countries to recreate or create for the first time the industry that we actually never had for a really long time. And there we can start calculating what's the profitability of, a lot of brands start installing rental, take back, resale, lease, whatever you call it, is they are filling their marketing calendars with what they think is the hype now. And we want the tendency. We want to see what is the long-term story and how is this actually going to work, so that at some point these rental or resale initiatives are actually a valuable revenue streams. But for that, we first need a lot of investment to change the way we are working. And I think if you ask me what's the road to profitability, I don't see it myself. I see the steps that need to happen, and I see a lot of need for capital to make it happen, and a lot of mindset change so that we start holding each other's hands instead of working against each other. But I also don't think it's necessary to count profitability. It's way above profitability. We have much more existential questions of the industry than who's gonna earn money. I think at the first phase, in the upcoming 5 to 10 years, nobody's gonna be earning money. And that's something we need to accept. Find the ones that are big enough and brave enough to jump when things are not so clear, and act as early adopters and trendsetters for the smaller ones to guide the way and show the best practices and pre-finance a bit for the sake of overall well-being of the industry. But I really don't know if that's just my dream or an actual potential scenario. So,
well, I think the combination we cannot step into new business model and new thinking if we don't invest. And it is definitely also a way of, I love the way you just said at the very beginning. We want to create something new with something old. Nothing against old, but our old mindset and the one we have now been living for many years, decades. So definitely. And I think we need all your bravery and your courage and your stubbornness to continue for everyone to push into the right direction. So, Tessa, tell us, what is your perspective when you hear all that? Business models, external pressure. We need to think about profitability differently. If there is a need of investment, we need bravery. What do you say?
Well, I agree, with a lot of things that have been said, and it's very wise what Sarah also said. And I agree on the fact that we need to collaborate, but not only within the fashion industry, but also look at how other industries are doing it. And actually what we're asking the customer to do is something really big. We're asking to change their habits, how they buy, how they spend money. we're asking so much actually that it's a step too far for the customer at the moment. But I really truly believe in an ice cube that's melting very slowly, and at the end it will just go rapidly. So I feel that we need to hang on. We need to stay brave. We need to find capital to make change. We need to find innovative people. We need to collaborate with innovative people. And then at some point, we will maybe make together more and more sense to it. But I truly believe that we need to detach from this old system too. And yeah, we maybe need to look back at the basics, like how do people live these days? How do they react? We need to, when you think about it, we design clothes for people to wear it. And most of the brands are not even looking at those people, their way of living, or how they act, how they do. How do people live these days? They're just making clothes for one body type. And then if you design that way, I feel like adding all these systems of repairing, circular systems that are just a bandage on the wound, instead of just looking at the wound and just act on that. So it feels, I have a lot of mixed feelings with profitability and sustainability. It's so unclear definitely for a designer point of view. There's so much. I think the only way you can do or act as a designer is to test things out and to see what works and how do people react on it. This information is valuable data. Give it to the bigger people to make more impact on it, okay, and so on. We just need to test much more and try and like really dare to fail from time to time. Like, okay, this is not an interesting way of doing a certain service. Okay, then we're skipping it, because yeah, we have to. It's the industry. It's our responsibility to hand a valuable system to the people, because people just act on what's given on their plate, because everyone is occupied with their own life. They don't have the time to think about better solutions, how they can wear their clothes longer, etc. So it's our job to do that.
Also, very wise words. And I think that there is no place for any other questions, else we're going to swap over. So I think that I would like to thank every one of you for your really great insight and input. We got also already some comments, very professional conversations, so which shows that you highlighted what is really necessary to think about. And I mean, if we wouldn't have problems, right, life wouldn't be interesting. So on that note, I would like to hand over to every one of us, because we are all concerned by it, so that we continue to tackle the problems, and that together, I loved also the way you said through collaboration, we can really contribute and help each other out, not only in the textile industry, but also elsewhere. So, I mean, today we have now reached the end of our webinar today, and we would like to thank everyone for joining us, and especially you, our panelists. Your insights were great. And to the audience, please feel free to post your question in the comment section below, and we will follow up and stay in touch. And if you want to reach out to one of more of our panelists, please do so. Feel free. And bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.